All right, racists, let's talk about your fear of karma. Racist America, you piece of shit country. You better be glad that black people aren't actively seeking revenge. Truly laughable that your biggest fear is that black indigenous people will do to you what you've done to them. And while it is your biggest fear, you may also be right. Either way, there isn't a thing you can do about it. Racist America is terrified of black violence. It fears black memory. It fears that the targets that they've learned skills from, profiled, incarcerated, surveilled, and killed might one day stop asking for justice and start taking inventory. Let's be precise. The racist American psyche is haunted by black rage. It is haunted by a subconscious knowledge that if revenge were ever truly on the table, America would not survive the week. They're aware that they're grossly outnumbered. They're aware that their soft bodies are fragile and unable to sustain impact trauma. And they're definitely aware that black people are light years ahead in physical activity. This is why racist America builds entire media industries around the scary black man. It's not literally about black people. It's projection. It should be viewed as a confession. They imagine black people as predators because they know deep down they are way worse than a predator. They cast black people as threats because their entire civilization is built on stolen breath and borrowed time. You see it every time a white woman clutches her purse. Every time a cop takes his gun out before he sees what's in the person's hand. Every time the suburbs panic when black families move in. They don't see citizens, they see karma because they know the truth. No one is policed this hard unless they hoped black people were unaware of the real origin story. But here's the irony. Black people have never, as a people, organized around vengeance. Even when they bombed your cities, poisoned your leaders, laughed while they beat your children on camera, you responded with coalitions instead of counter-terror. The fear they feel isn't based on what is. It's based on what they know they deserve. And the ugliest truth? They fear black revenge because they know what they would do if it were them. And what keeps them up at night is knowing that you should seek revenge. And the only reason why any of them sleep at night is because black people, once again, chose dignity over destruction. For now.
The Democrats are playing in our face yet again. Just watch Black House Democrats hold a press conference reintroducing H.R. 40. Question is, how long are they going to play in our face as if research isn't at our fingertips? So let me explain to you what H.R. 40 is. H.R. 40 is a U.S. House of Representatives bill that proposes the creation of a commission to develop proposals for reparations for descendants of slaves. So be clear, it's not a bill that's already done. It's not a study to get the bill done. It's not a commission to get the bill to get the study done. It's a proposal to get the commission to get the... Now, this bill was first introduced in 1989. It's now 36 years later. And you mean to tell me that you don't have enough research in order to create a bill to put it on the congressional floor for a vote for reparations for Black American people? Black people have got to start saying no to tokenism and political theater. H.R. 40 is a gesture making it look like Congress is addressing reparations without actually doing anything. The research already exists. We don't need a commission to study what's already known. The government has already paid reparations to Japanese Americans after internment, to Native American tribes, and even to former slave owners. The precedent is there. They just don't want to apply it to Black Americans. Let's recognize this for what it is. It's a stall tactic to keep kicking the can down the road until the conversation loses momentum. If reparations were truly on the table, lawmakers would be drafting actual legislation, not just studying it for the thousandth time. This is not a step towards real reparations. It's a way to avoid them.
Sorry, Black creators, how would we know? How would we know that if a racist white person comments the N-word on your post, you guys get removed for hate speech? And that's how we're digitally erasing you guys in the modern era. It's never been easier. How would I know? The only reason I would know is because 100 white people called me an N-word lover yesterday, and I had to sit there and manually delete it. I don't want to get my account removed. That's what my account got taken down for 2 days ago. And it just reaffirms why I'm so terrified to talk to white people. I always have been. First thing you learn as a white person in America is we can burn down the world to be right about it. We did. Also, we can get rid of any person who remembers our history. We did. Also, we can get rid of any book that talks about it. We did. Last year, we got rid of 10,000 books, right? Either way, it's important to remember that our power is built on an illusion, right? It's based off of torture techniques like the slave trade or Indian removal. Andrew Jackson called it Indian removal, the Trail of Tears, we can say. And now we do for-profit prisons and immigrations and customs. But power now comes directly from the erasure and our performance of victimization after we created the atrocities. This is why I consider most white people to be a little bit sociopaths, right? We've been performing this for so long that it's our greatest survival instinct. And it's born out of the projection of our horrors and atrocities. It's like how we prevent reparation. Manufacture consent with propaganda. We say woke police. We say war on Christmas. We say Trump derangement syndrome, right? Like the New Age draped mania. And even the Israeli occupational force, right? We say defense force now. In the future, that's an occupational force. In the future, the war on Christmas is still just corporate Christian colonialism. And we only have one word for the victimization we cause, and it starts with geno and it ends in side because it's the only way to prove that we're chosen. Lastly, I think I can say the natural tendency of Western colonial settler states to create ethno-states and militarize their youth is the inevitable path any nation state would take if it persecuted their own citizens. Have a good day.
Every time I bring up slavery, somebody jumps out of the shadows like, did you know black people owned slaves too? Like, that's supposed to stop the conversation. Like, that's the gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about it. The first recorded black slave owner in the American colonies was a man named Anthony Johnson. He was taken from Angola in the early 1600s, survived indentured servitude in Virginia, gained his freedom, and eventually owned land, over 250 acres. That's wild, considering the time, right? But here's where it gets twisted. In 1654, Johnson went to court to claim that another black man, John Cassar, owed him a lifetime of labor. And the court sided with him. And just like that, chattel slavery was legally extended, not by a white man, but by a free black man. This is the part that people love to throw in your face without a shred of historical nuance. So yeah, Anthony Johnson was the first. And yes, over time, some other free black people, especially in places like New Orleans and Charleston, they owned and enslaved people too. Sometimes to protect family members from the system, sometimes to gain wealth and proximity to power. And no, hell no, I'm not excusing it. It was betrayal, it was cruel, it was wrong. But I'm also not going to sit here and let you pretend that that canceled out 400 years of white-led genocide. Because here's what you're not going to do. You're not going to erase the fact that 98% of enslaved people were owned, traded, insured, and brutalized by white people. You're not going to pretend that black people created the boats, the laws, the markets, and the damn system itself. Black participation was a stain, but white supremacy was the blueprint. And let me give you one more twist to that Anthony Johnson story. After he died, Virginia snatched that land back from his family. They claimed that black people couldn't be citizens. So miss me with that fantasy that owning people bought him safety. The very system that he tried to participate in turned around and ate him whole. So yeah, some black people tried to mimic the master, but that doesn't make them the architects. It makes them proof of how poisonous that system really was. They weren't trying to build freedom. They were trying not to drown. And in doing so, they passed the chains on. We don't hide the truth over here, but we damn sure won't let you weaponize it either.
I don't know why you're asking me these low-level deflective questions, because in case you haven't noticed, I'm not the one who decides who receives reparations. But in the 12th century, there was a French cleric who tried to demand reparations from the King of Denmark for damage done to his monastery and the enslavement of French people during the Viking raids. He didn't receive any, but if you genuinely feel that strongly about it, rather than hijacking conversations about reparations for Black Americans, put in the labor and do your own advocacy work. However, I think you might run into a couple of problems. The first being, there is no Viking government that materially benefited from the Viking raids in existence today. The second being, I think you're going to have a hard time making the argument that the Viking raids and any systems of oppression that they had put in place are continuing to cause you harm. Similar with the Barbary pirates. When those entities were defeated, their practices of enslavement and the systems of oppression that they had put in place were defeated with them. But in the conversation about reparations for Black Americans, it is not only that the United States legally supported, facilitated, and materially benefited from chattel slavery, it's also that following the Confederate defeat in the Civil War, the United States paid former enslavers reparations, broke its promise to pay the formerly enslaved reparations, and implemented nearly 100 years of Jim Crow. And those systems of oppression, systemic bias, and institutional biases continue to harm Black people to this day.
Something that baffles me about a lot of Black people is that they hate slavery. They hate Americanized slavery so much. They hate what it did to our people, our ancestors, and the effects that it has today. But they completely ignore the indoctrination part. Like, they completely ignore the effects, the negative effects that Christianity had on slaves. I mean, as we know, slaves weren't really allowed to read. In places where they were allowed to read, their literature was heavily restricted and were only allowed to read things like the Slave Bible, which is basically just a highly edited version of the Bible that takes out, like, basically the good stuff and leaves in stuff that basically is pro-slavery, like stuff about owning slaves and telling slaves to obey your masters and stuff like that. Like, it is mind-boggling to me how so many Black Christians ignored that part of Christian history. And it's not like it's old news. I mean, this is pretty recent history-wise. Like, you believe in an all-powerful God, but he did nothing for 300 plus years while your ancestors were enslaved. And let's not forget the 3Ks, white hood people. Like, that's a Christian group. A lot of people like to say they weren't Christian, they were burning crosses. They were Christian. They were Christian. Like, you can talk with any clan tag member, they're Christian. I don't think I've ever seen a clan tag member that wasn't a Christian. And no, I am not saying because of this that all Christians are bad people or all Christians are racist. I'm not saying that at all.
I really appreciate this comment because I remember growing up surrounded by other white folks, and they'd always be saying that Black people need to stop making everything about race. So then when I got older and I started to realize that literally everything in this country is about race, I began to wonder why it is that all the white folks I know want everyone to stop talking about race. And what became really clear to me is that the reason we white folks want everyone else to stop talking about race is because that system, that racialized social system, implicates us as the bad guys. And we think that black folks bring up race because they want us to suffer for what our ancestors did to their ancestors. But nothing could be further from the truth. Black folks didn't choose to be black in a racial caste system that oppresses black people. They didn't choose to be part of a system that oppresses them. So while we want everyone to stop talking about race because we don't want to be the bad guys, black folks don't have a choice.
Currently, America is rebranding itself to New Age racism. What's going on in DC is this country's new attempt to terrorize black people. That's it. There's nothing else to it. They're going to go around all the blue states doing this, I guarantee you. They want to see how we do under military occupation, and they have to test this out just like they wanted to see how we did during COVID, during the shutdown. And just like I explained to somebody before, this country was built off of oppression. This country built off of slavery and all these other things, right? So for them to make this country great again, they have to try to reinstitute these things, right? They have to reinvent racism, and they have to reinvent the wealth gap, and they essentially have to reinvent slavery and poverty. They have to reinvent these things through prison, through damaging people's homes and communities. However they do it, this is what they need to do first. They've been looking for a way to galvanize black people to get into this fight one way or another. This is what they want. They're going to go around black neighborhoods, bothering black folks, terrorizing black people. And black people, you don't have to move in fear, but you definitely have to move smart, because they are going to be looking for a reason to turn folks' stuff inside out and knock people's head loose. It is what it is. And I just seen a video of a guy ready to swing on a cop in X, Y, and Z. Listen, don't fall for their tricks. They're going to taunt and tease. Don't fall for their tricks, people.
As more people are kidnapped by ICE to fill their quota, I am reminded time and time again of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 essentially gave officers and people the right to kidnap black people who they believed ran away from their enslavers to be free. You can probably guess that even if that person was legally free, they could be kidnapped, even if they did have legal papers that they were a free person. Often, people who were kidnapped under the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act could not testify for themselves or did not have a trial with a jury in court. They could just be sent back to their enslavers or worse. And I can imagine people during that time saying things like, well, if they wanted to be free, they should have done it the right way, not the illegal way. But can you imagine how difficult it was to get your freedom as a black person when the entire country was built upon your back? And often people would be hired and paid to hunt people down and kidnap them. The more people that they ripped from their homes, from their families, from their freedom, the more they got paid. Are you starting to see the comparisons here? The dehumanization? The stripping away of rights? Are you starting to see the purpose of ripping communities and family apart for power and for money and blaming it on the victims who are truly just trying to find safety? Can you imagine if you lived in 1850 and let the words fall from your mouth, they should have done it the right way. They should have proved their humanity to us the right way. That doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't make sense to me now. And I cannot believe I'm alive watching an act that I learned about in school in 1850 appear right before my very eyes again, with basically no difference from how it was in the 1800s. It's the exact same.
I don't want to end this on a sad note, so please educate yourself on your rights and protect your neighbors, protect your friends, protect your family, and learn your history so you recognize when it is repeating, very obviously.
A lot of people don't know is that there were very few slaves imported into the United States between 1775 and 1783. And that's because of the American Revolution. Everyone knows about the Boston Tea Party of 1773. This made the British very mad, which made them start the Intolerable Acts of 1774, which imposed a series of taxes on the colonies so that they can pay back the money from all the goods lost in the Boston Tea Party. Well, the colonists weren't going for that. So they started a committee called the Continental Congress. And in 1774, they made a document called the Articles of Association, which stated by if December 1st, 1774, Britain hadn't removed the Intolerable Acts, then they would put a ban on all British goods. Well, Britain basically laughed in their face and doubled down on what the fuck they said. So in 1775, Great Britain imposed the Prohibitory Acts, which basically removed the colonies from the protection of the British Crown. Not only that, they was going to seize and sink any vessels coming from and to the colonies and banned all goods from coming to the American colonies. So basically, there were no British goods brought to the Americas between 1775 and 1783. And that means slaves too. In fact, there were very few slaves. The last slave ship that was brought to the Americas between that time period was in 1777. So between 1775 and 1777, only about 1,000 or so slaves made it to the Americas. Not only did the British stop slaves from coming to the American colonies, the British took 1/4 of the entire slave population to join the British Army. 1775, Earl of Virginia, Lord Dunmore, proclaimed that he would free any slaves who joined the British Army to fight in the American Revolution. About 80,000 to 100,000 slaves escaped so that they could cross over into British lines. Yeah, for 8 years, there were no new slaves imported into the Americas. And they got 1/4 of their population stolen from the British. Yet somehow, the slave population continued to grow. Tell me how that was possible. They enslaved the indigenous. Okay. The more you know.
I don't know why everybody got mad at me for saying it because it's true. Like, I said it on Twitter, and now I'm arguing with everybody on Twitter because I said that, black people and other people on color, we can all be the strongest people on the planet. We can all be in one group. But the thing is, white people come in, offer y'all some crumbs, and y'all throw yourselves at their feet and stab black Americans in the blood. Black Americans have been betrayed by everybody on this single planet, and everybody got mad at me for saying it. Why is y'all mad? Like, a good example right now is the Latino community and how a good chunk of them, like nearly all of them, voted for Trump. Or when the Asian communities, when they literally be racist towards black Americans. Nearly in every single language on this planet is an insult to black people. Like, why is y'all surprised we don't want shit to do with y'all? We want to be out on our own. Like, y'all saying we being harsh when we live been stabbed back for centuries over and over and over again, and now we're saying we're done. Y'all shocked? Be fucking for real.
Did y'all know that by 2060, only 10% of the world's population is going to be white?
Yes, and they know that too. That's why there's been so many right-wing movements throughout Europe and the United States over the past 8 to 9 years. 2024 election is a perfect example of this. Think about everything that Trump has said over the last 8 years. All of the sexist comments, the racist comments, the disparaging comments against the Latino community. How he botched the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic that led to the deaths of over 1 million Americans. And with all of that, 57% of white Americans still voted for Donald Trump. 55% of men still voted for Donald Trump. The 2024 election had very clear racist and sexist undertones to it. But if you ask many Americans what it means to be white, they're not going to even know. So let's talk about it. 100 years ago, to be white meant to be a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, or a WASP. By the 1960s, that population started to decline. And with whiteness being a system, they had to adapt. So they included Jewish Americans, Irish Catholic, and Italian Americans into whiteness. During the 1970s, this was perfect. This is when people were leaving the cities for the suburbs due to white flight. Those populations could buy into the American dream. But by 2000, the white population started to become stagnant again. So what do? You adapt. And conditionally, light-complected Latino Americans, primarily Cubans, started to be accepted into whiteness. Also, some Asian Americans, conditionally. 46% of Hispanic and Latino Americans voted for Donald Trump. 39% of Asian Americans voted for Donald Trump. Because certain members of those groups have been conditionally accepted into whiteness to maintain its survival and its supremacy. How do you maintain white supremacy? Well, you buy into it. And you absolutely can buy into whiteness. Look at Clarence Thomas, Candace Owens, Elaine Chao, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and George Santos. In order to buy into whiteness, it used to be, don't say anything about racism. But now it's become more than that. When you buy into whiteness, you buy into colonialism, you buy into Western imperialism, American exceptionalism, Christian nationalism, and Zionism. If you're willing to protect those systems, congratulations, you can buy yourself into whiteness, which President Trump is the definition of. Because not only does he want to maintain it, he wants to accelerate it. Something that 13% of Black Americans, 46% of Hispanic Latino Americans, and 39% of Asian Americans also want to buy into. So they can benefit, even if they don't say they want to. But by 2060, only 10% of the population is going to be visibly white. So whiteness is going to have to adapt again, which it already is. By 2060, what is going to make you white is how well you protect imperialism, colonialism, and wealth of the most wealthy. How well do you protect the 1% versus the 99%? Keep that 1% extremely wealthy, while the 99% fighting for resources. That is what's going to make you white. We're already at that point. Later.
I was today years old when I found out that some people believe that the transatlantic slave trade was a hoax. Like, there's people out there that think that it was impossible to sail across the Atlantic. I'm literally putting this here because I can't believe, like, my own eyes couldn't believe it at first. Some people think that there were indigenous Black people in the Americas. Children were left behind. The schools need to be reopened. Also, whenever you think there's a huge conspiracy, I feel like your first question should be, why? For what purpose? Like, if this would be the most elaborate conspiracy, to what end? There has to be like an obvious answer. And if there isn't, then I feel like your conspiracy is wrong. I'm sorry.
A lady on here I follow said, if only 7% of the world's population is white, then who's enforcing white supremacy? And I looked it up. I believe from different articles that I read, it ranges from 7 to up to 16% of the world's population is white. That's all to say, a minority. And I know that we all know that under these systems that dominate and control us, we all contribute in some way. And unless we unlearn, we will all continue to unconsciously contribute in some way. But to hear the number, to hear the percentage of a population, and I also believe within maybe, let's say it's up to 16% of the world's population is white. I personally believe that in this day and age, only a fraction of that fraction is actually white supremacist, actually racist, actually believes in this ideology. But that's all to say, only a fraction of the world's population has us in a chokehold like this. It's actually embarrassing. But in all seriousness, it's something to reflect on and to note. It's very easy to point the finger over there and say it's them. They're doing this to us. But sometimes the enemy, for lack of a better word, is much closer to home than we realize. And I think it's better to reflect within our own spaces and to ask ourselves how we can do better first before we start pointing fingers and say, well, they're not treating us well. Because it really doesn't matter if it's a minority of the world's population.
Donald Trump cannot win. This whole fight on tariffs, he doesn't realize you can't win this fight because the American economy has never in world history done anything without slavery. Basically, we need cheap labor. We need labor that is oppressed. We need labor that has no rights. That is the only way this has ever worked. So when he says we've got to produce in America and everyone's just like, we can't do it, it's because we have never even tried to figure out an economic system that exists without somebody being the new slave class. If you go back to the roots of America, right? You go to the American Revolution, yay, we win. And then what happened? The country went into a serious depression. That's what they left out of the history books. So we always talk about the Great Depression and FDR, how he, rallied the troops and the New Deal. The first Great Depression was in the aftermath of the revolution. The country was destroyed by war. The country no longer had Britain to back them up. We no longer had the British as a trade partner. And all those British territories, like in the Caribbean, Southern planters couldn't send their crops there anymore for sale because the British are not messing with you no more. The country was in a depression. What pulled it out? Slavery. Slavery was actually dying. And then all of a sudden in 1793, the cotton gin gets produced and it's like, whoa, we have new life. And so the same field hands that go out and pick cotton, they're now like 300 times more productive. And so all of a sudden, America figured out we can flood the world market with cheap cotton because we don't have to pay the labor. And all of a sudden, America goes from a few dusty tobacco plantations on the East Coast to a major world economic power because 7/8 of the world's cotton supply comes from the United States of America. We never were going to figure this out without slavery. It was a dying experiment of a new country without slavery. And so you fast forward, all of a sudden, we're in a situation now where Donald Trump wants to figure out how to do everything the American way. And people are like, that's not even an option, bro, because we don't know how to do this without slavery. The capitalist system that we have has quite literally never worked without a slave class. And so when people talk about the immigrants, we need them to pick the strawberries. Who else is going to pick the strawberries? If they don't do it, strawberries are going to cost $80. Yes, because we have never even tried to imagine an economy without slavery. And so a lot of people get worked up when people talk about slavery. And why does everything have to be about slavery? Because the American story is about slavery. You don't have an America without slavery. The whole thing is slavery. from the White House to the insurance companies to the universities, every part of this, the first mortgage products, the first insurance product, Lloyd's of London, what was it? Marine insurance. What were they insuring? So again, Donald Trump is finding out the hard way that you mean to tell me we have an economy that can't exist without slave labor? Yes, that is exactly what we built. And it takes a real reimagining to undo that. It takes something beyond saying, let's build some factories here. We have to fundamentally look at how this system is built. What were the foundations of the system? And are there corrective measures? Because at present, all we got is slavery.
I'm going to say what I want to say, and I'm not going to address anything, and I'm going to go back to my fucking exam season hiatus. It will never be any of your white places to critique and police the way an oppressed person reacts to their oppression. And that applies in all fucking circumstances. Every single circumstance. And those of you who want to support people of colour, yeah, it will never be your place to critique the approach that people of colour take to getting their freedom. And it will never be your place to critique the way people of colour operate in said movements to get their freedom. And it will also never be your place to critique the way the people who are supporting said movement operate as people of colour within said movement when they are reacting or interacting with white people. Those of you who tell me everything isn't about race, everything is race, ho. Everything is about race. Everything is about race and race relations, because you listen to certain people, you ignore others, you amplify certain people, you give certain people graces, and then on top of that, you will critique the way that the people that you are villainizing react to your fucking inflammatory actions. It makes no fucking sense. And that's why I don't trust any of you. None of you. I don't trust you. You can wave every flag you want to wave and put everything in your bio and put everything in your fucking name. I don't trust you guys, because you fundamentally disregard the way that basic racism is woven into our institutions. It is a part of the fabric, of the makeup of modern society. So why the fuck would you not think that it is part of movements? It is it is the most relevant factor to me. It is the most relevant factor because it impacts the way everybody moves. It impacts the way I observe behavior. Because a lot of you don't want to admit that you don't listen to people of color. You have to wait for a white person to tell you to do something, and then you do it. And that's not just white people, that's all people as well. I will do another video explaining the way this relates to Congo, okay?
Just your friendly reminder that racism is on the rise because people of color, particularly black people, are beating white people at their own game. Misogyny is on the rise because women are beating men at their own game. There's an attack on neurodivergent individuals because they're the ones calling out all of the things that are not right in this world. And there's an attack on transgender individuals because they're proving the gender binary is in fact a societal construct.
To all people out there who believe in the supernatural, let me tell you what's happening in this country. Our ancestors are causing in Black America. Let me offer you some proof. All the major elements have been hit. The fire at Nottoway, that's fire. The white man who was found in Lake Lanier, that's water. The tree falling on the Confederate Museum, that's earth. The tornadoes that's been blowing down mostly non-black areas, that's wind. The lightning that just struck the police vehicle in Oklahoma, that's lightning. That's all the elements. I've had visions, and let me tell you, it's gonna get 10 times worse. Our ancestors are on a spiritual fucking rampage right now. I don't know if you've noticed, but you may want to turn on your TV. Because the next time it actually comes around, it's going to be 10 times worse. They are demanding we be treated correctly and given reparations for what we've been through. Just saying.
I'm a Black American from California who's also an academic, and I'm seeing a disconnect in the discourse right now, and we are not going to agree on this. We are not going to reach some type of mutual understanding. Black Americans are willing to let it burn. Black Americans are willing to stand on the bridge and light the match themselves so that it can burn. And I don't think other communities know what to do with that, because that has never been the vibe or the get down of Black Americans. We have always been able to fight. We have always been willing to fight. We have always been on the front line, but this is one time we are willing to let it burn. And I'm seeing all the disconnect in the discourse, right? And it's like Black academics don't know how to speak to the regular Black folks because I don't know if they don't know how, or they're just not being honest about the ways in which immigration impacts Black communities, right? And then you have Black Americans descendants of slaves having a hard time engaging with Black immigrants who are first, second, third generation. Then you have Black Americans or Black people who are also having a hard time engaging with other POC communities. And the problem is all of those conversations are happening at the same time, and people don't know if they want to appeal to our Blackness or if they're trying to appeal to our Americanness. Because even Black Americans haven't reconciled what it means to be Black American, because while we're Black, we understand that we're oppressed, but a lot of Black Americans don't understand the ways in which we still benefit from American imperialism and colonization, so on and so forth, right? And the problem with these conversations happening at the same time is they're happening because they're trying to force Black Americans to do something. And it's unfortunate that it's happening at a time where like people actually need Black Americans to do something. And perhaps if people weren't under the type of stress that they're under, the conversations could be different. But this is one time where I'm realizing that other communities are just going to have to do this alone and do this without Black Americans. Now, there's still going to be some Black people. Like, I know that there are Black people in LA right now protesting ICE. That's going to happen. But the Black people who are not in California, specifically who are not in LA, I would figure out how to plan without them, because this is one time where I don't think that their minds are going to be changed.
So racism has always been expensive. It's always been expensive. It's just they always thought that they would have the fee. They always thought they would have the fee, and hell, for a good minute they did. They had the fee to give. See, the problem is now they don't have the fee. They don't have the fee, so it's becoming a problem. And rather than stop trying to pay the fucking fee, y'all will literally kill yourselves. And kill the reputation of this country, of this nation, trying to pay a fee that y'all should have been stopped paying, okay? Y'all should have been stopped paying. When colleges went from being tuition free to tuition based in in the 1960s, that was all because y'all couldn't stop us from getting educated anymore, so you wanted to put a roadblock in there. You wanted to make it harder for us. We didn't have the capital like you guys did, so you added tuition. The reason why America doesn't have universal health care is because that means everybody would have access to it, that including people like me and you. And they don't want that. They thought that they would always have surgery money. They thought that they was always going to have outpatient care money. You understand? Private doctor money. Hell, I'm not going to an office. I can always have them come to me. That's what they thought they was always going to have. And as they started to see that they were losing leverage, rather than stop paying the fee for racism, they said, bitch, here, take my arm, take my leg, take my organs. To the point where you guys are where you are today. Still trying to pay a fee. Going out of your way to pay a fee. That literally is killing you. It's killing you. And then now that you're starting to realize that y'all really did fuck around a little bit too much, you want my pretty black ass to get up out of my seat to come and fight for you? Oh, you're fucking stupid. Oh, you're beyond stupid. You're beyond, my pretty self. You see me? Y'all see my brothers and sisters? They fine too. We supposed to get up out of our seats? Up out of our beds? And I heard a white woman literally said, black people, stay where you are. I would never take no advice from white people unless it was on how to be selfish, because that's the only thing that I think that they can give. However, this white lady said, do not get up out of your seats. You want to know why? They want us to get out and be in the streets so that now they can plot to kill us. Us doing exactly what we're doing. Like, this is why they so hot. This is why they 50 degrees. Like, they hot because they wanted us to come out there so that we could be fucking sitting ducks. Especially considering they done seen how fucking expensive racism is now. But it's always been like that. Y'all just didn't care because y'all had the fee.